My 5-year-old daughter Sophie made a small sand castle. The mean HOA lady Margaret got very angry about it. When my wife Sarah tried to take Sophie home, Margaret got a gun. Nobody walks away from me. Margaret screamed and shot Sarah. Margaret didn't know I am the district attorney. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The playground was supposed to be safe. That's what we told ourselves every morning when little Sophie ran to play with her bright pink backpack bouncing on her shoulders. My wife Sarah always walked beside her, watching our 5-year-old daughter with loving, protective eyes that never missed a single moment of joy on Sophie's face. Sarah was the best mother in the world. She had stopped working as a nurse when Sophie was born 5 years ago. She said taking care of Sophie was the most important job she could ever have. Every single day, rain or shine, she took Sophie to the neighborhood playground at exactly 10 a.m. Sarah would push Sophie on the swings for hours, help her climb the monkey bars, and sit in the sandbox building elaborate castles together. Our neighborhood was called Willowbrook Estates. The real estate agent had promised us it was perfect for families with young children. The playground had brand new swings, colorful slides, and a large sandbox filled with clean, soft sand. The HOA brochures showed happy families enjoying safe outdoor spaces designed with children in mind. We thought we had found paradise for our little family. But Margaret Crawford had very different ideas about what our neighborhood should be. Margaret was the HOA president and had been for 6 long years. She was 64 years old, lived alone in the biggest house on Maple Street, and had ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist for 2 decades. She had no children of her own, no grandchildren to visit, and apparently no patience for families who did. From our very first day in Willowbrook, she made it crystal clear that children were unwelcome nuisances to be controlled and silenced. Children today are completely undisciplined, Margaret announced at every monthly HOA meeting, her voice sharp and bitter. They are too loud, too messy, too destructive. They have no respect for property or authority. Parents these days let them run wild like animals. The first sign of serious trouble came exactly 3 weeks after we moved into our dream home. It was a beautiful Tuesday morning in September. Sophie was happily playing on the tall slide, her little legs dangling as she prepared to go down. She was giggling with pure joy, the sound like music floating across the empty playground. That's when Margaret appeared out of nowhere, marching across the grass with her metal measuring tape, official-looking clipboard, and the angriest expression I had ever seen on a human face. "Excuse me," Margaret said to Sarah in the coldest, most hostile voice imaginable. "Your child is seriously violating multiple playground safety regulations." Sarah looked up from the bench where she was reading, completely confused by the sudden confrontation. "I'm sorry, what regulations?" "Sophie is just playing on the slide. Small children under the age of 8 are strictly prohibited from using equipment designed for older, more mature children. That slide has specific height and age requirements that your daughter clearly does not meet." Sarah stood up and walked over to check the official sign posted near the playground entrance. She read it carefully twice before responding. "Mrs. Crawford, this sign clearly states that all equipment is designed for children ages 2 to 12. Sophie is 5 years old, which puts her right in the middle of the recommended age range." "That sign is completely incorrect and outdated," Margaret snapped, her face turning red with anger. "I am in the process of updating all playground regulations based on modern safety standards. Small children like yours are serious safety hazards. They move too slowly, they get scared easily, and they cause accidents when bigger children try to use the equipment properly." Sophie was still sitting at the top of the slide, completely unaware of the heated argument happening below her. She had been about to slide down, but now she sensed tension and stayed frozen at the top, her big brown eyes looking down with confusion. "Mrs. Crawford, Sophie isn't bothering anyone or causing any problems. There are no other children here right now, so there's no conflict over equipment usage." "That is completely beside the point," Margaret replied, her voice getting louder and more aggressive. "Rules exist for a reason. They must be followed consistently, regardless of circumstances. Exceptions lead to chaos and disorder." Margaret pulled out her expensive smartphone and began taking multiple photographs of Sophie sitting on the slide. She took pictures from every possible angle, as if she were documenting a crime scene. "This incident will be thoroughly documented as a serious safety violation," Margaret announced while continuing to photograph my daughter. "According to updated HOA policy, 3 documented violations result in complete revocation of playground privileges for the entire family." Sarah's face went completely pale with shock and disbelief. "You're saying you'll ban my 5-year-old daughter from the neighborhood playground?" If she and her family cannot follow simple, clearly established safety rules, then yes, absolutely. That night, Sarah cried quietly while tucking Sophie into her little bed with the pink unicorn sheets. Our daughter looked up at her mother with innocent, trusting eyes. "Mama, why was that angry lady taking so many pictures of me today?" Sophie asked in her sweet, small voice. "Did I do something wrong on the slide?" "No, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, stroking Sophie's soft hair. "You did absolutely nothing wrong. You were just playing and having fun exactly like you're supposed to do. Don't worry about the angry lady. Mama and Daddy will take care of everything." But Margaret Crawford was just getting started with her campaign of terror against our family. The very next week, she installed brand new signs all around the playground. These weren't normal playground rules. They were completely insane restrictions clearly designed to make it impossible for young children to play. No children under 8 years old allowed on any equipment without continuous adult supervision requiring physical contact at all times. No vocalizations above normal indoor speaking volume permitted in playground area. No running, jumping, or rapid movement allowed on or near any playground equipment. No sand, mulch, or wood chips may be disturbed, moved, or displaced from original positions. Playground access limited to weekdays only, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., with no exceptions. All children must remain on designated pathways unless actively using specific equipment. A maximum playground occupancy, 4 children at any given time. "These rules are completely insane," Sarah told me that evening after dinner, her voice filled with frustration and disbelief. "Sophie can't possibly play normally with these ridiculous restrictions. She can't even laugh or run around like a normal 5-year-old. "I'll call an emergency HOA meeting," I promised, though I was still hiding my identity as the district attorney. Margaret can't just make up arbitrary rules that specifically target families with young children. There have to be limits to her authority. But when I started investigating Margaret's background and history in the neighborhood, I discovered something truly disturbing. She had been systematically driving young families out of Willowbrook Estates for years. It was like a calculated, long-term plan to turn our family-friendly community into an adults-only retirement area. Margaret's strategy was always exactly the same. She would wait for young couples with small children to move in, initially appearing friendly and welcoming. Then she would gradually introduce increasingly strict and unreasonable rules specifically targeting normal childhood activities. She would document every tiny violation with photographs and official reports. Finally, she would use the HOA's legal authority and threat of lawsuits to make life so miserable that families would give up and move away. In the past 5 years alone, at least 15 families with young children had sold their homes and left Willowbrook. Most of them cited HOA harassment and hostile environment for children as their primary reasons for leaving. Despite knowing how impossible the situation was becoming, Sarah tried desperately to follow every single one of Margaret's ridiculous rules. She stayed within arm's reach of Sophie at all times, even when our daughter was just sitting quietly in the sandbox. She constantly reminded Sophie to whisper instead of speaking in her normal voice, and definitely never to laugh out loud. She brought a small broom and dustpan to immediately sweep up any sand that might stick to Sophie's shoes or clothes. But no matter how carefully Sarah tried to follow the rules, it was never enough for Margaret's impossible standards. "Your child's shoelaces are completely untied," Margaret would say, appearing suddenly from behind trees with her camera ready. "Untied shoes create serious tripping hazards and constitute a safety violation that endangers other community members." "Your daughter touched the fence with hands that had traces of sand on them," she would complain the next day. "Sand residue on community property constitutes vandalism and property damage." That child's voice exceeded acceptable volume levels during play activities, Margaret would write in her daily violation reports that she submitted to the HOA board. Excessive noise disrupts the peaceful environment that residents expect and deserve. Over the weeks of constant harassment and criticism, Sophie began to change in heartbreaking ways. The happy, carefree little girl who used to run and laugh and play with abandon gradually became quiet, nervous, and constantly worried. She would look around fearfully before getting on any playground equipment, always checking to see if the angry lady was hiding somewhere nearby, watching and waiting to yell at her. "Mama, am I a bad girl?" Sophie asked one afternoon after Margaret had screamed at her for accidentally stepping off the designated walkway while chasing a butterfly. "Am I doing everything wrong?" "No, baby," Sarah said, kneeling down to hug our daughter tightly. "You are the best, sweetest, most wonderful little girl in the entire world. Some people just don't like children very much, and that makes them say mean things. But you are perfect exactly the way you are. Why don't some people like children, Mama? I don't know, sweetheart. I wish I could explain it, but I really don't understand it either. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in October. The air was crisp and beautiful, with colorful leaves falling from the trees around the playground. Sarah and Sophie arrived during the permitted hours, carefully following every single ridiculous rule that Margaret had established. Sophie was sitting quietly in the sandbox, very carefully building a small castle with her favorite plastic bucket and shovel. Margaret appeared from absolutely nowhere, like she had been hiding in the bushes waiting for an excuse to attack. Her face was twisted with rage and hatred. "What is this?" she shrieked at the top of her lungs, pointing dramatically at Sophie's tiny sand castle. "It's just a castle," Sarah said as calmly as possible. "Sophie is playing quietly in the sandbox just like the rules allow. The sandbox regulations clearly state that no structures, buildings, or formations may be constructed that alter the sand's natural level surface." Sarah looked down at the innocent little castle Sophie had built. It was maybe 6 inches tall and 8 inches wide, contained entirely within the sandbox boundaries, and created with the toys that were specifically provided for sandbox play. "Mrs. Crawford, she's 5 years old. She's just playing with sand the way children have played for thousands of years. It's completely harmless. Rules are rules." Margaret's voice became louder and more unhinged. That thing she built is vandalism. It's property destruction. It's a deliberate violation of community standards. Sophie looked up from her castle with big, confused, frightened eyes. She had worked so carefully and quietly to build something beautiful, and now the angry lady was screaming about it. "Mama, is my castle bad?" Sophie asked in a tiny, scared voice. "Should I not have built it?" "No, sweetheart," Sarah said, her own voice becoming stronger with protective anger. "Your castle is absolutely beautiful. There is nothing wrong with building sand castles." Margaret pulled out her smartphone and began taking photographs of Sophie and her sand castle from every possible angle, like she was documenting evidence of a serious crime. The camera clicked rapidly as she circled around the sandbox. "This flagrant violation is going directly into my official report to the HOA board," Margaret announced while continuing to photograph our terrified daughter. "This family has shown complete and total disregard for community standards and regulations." "You are frightening my daughter," Sarah said firmly, stepping protectively between Margaret and Sophie. "Please stop taking pictures of my child. Your daughter is the one who should be frightened. Children like her don't belong in a respectable, well-maintained community like this one." "Children like her?" Sarah's voice became sharp and dangerous. "What exactly do you mean by that, Mrs. Crawford?" "Undisciplined. Destructive. Wild. From families who think rules and regulations don't apply to them because they have precious little children." Sophie started crying then, scared by the loud, angry voices and confused about why building a sandcastle had made the angry lady so furious. Margaret moved closer to Sarah, invading her personal space, her face bright red with uncontrolled anger. "Families like yours should be living in cheap apartment complexes or rental properties where this kind of behavior is tolerated. This neighborhood is designed for mature adults who understand property values and community standards. This is specifically advertised as a family neighborhood," Sarah said firmly, refusing to back down. "The HOA documents and marketing materials explicitly mention families with children as the target demographic. Those documents are outdated and incorrect. I have been working for years to change the character of this community. Children destroy property values. They create constant noise and mess and chaos. They turn peaceful adult communities into daycare centers." Sophie was crying harder now, hiding behind Sarah's legs and clutching her mother's hand tightly. "You need to leave right now," Sarah said with quiet authority. "You are terrorizing my 5-year-old daughter, and I will not tolerate it for one more second." "I don't need to do anything," Margaret screamed, completely losing control. "This is my community. I have lived here for 20 years. I have invested my life in maintaining standards here. Your family has been here for 20 minutes and you think you can change everything." Margaret pointed an accusatory finger directly at Sophie, who was still crying behind her mother. "That child needs to learn respect. She needs to learn that there are serious consequences for breaking rules and destroying property. She is 5 years old." Sarah shouted back, her maternal instincts fully activated. "I don't care if she's 5 or 15 or 50. Rules apply to everyone equally. No exceptions for cute little children." Sarah had reached her absolute limit. She picked up Sophie to comfort her and started walking toward the playground exit. We are leaving right now. Sophie does not deserve to be yelled at and terrorized for building a sand castle. Don't you dare walk away from me. Margaret screamed, her voice reaching a pitch that could probably be heard 3 blocks away. This conversation is not over. You cannot disrespect me in my own community. Goodbye, Mrs. Crawford, Sarah said firmly, not turning around. Don't you turn your back on me. I am the president of this HOA. I demand respect. You will show me the respect I deserve. Sarah continued walking steadily toward the parking lot, carrying Sophie and trying to calm our crying daughter with gentle words and soft kisses on her forehead. That's when Margaret Crawford crossed the line from neighborhood harassment into something much more sinister and dangerous. I said stop. Margaret screamed at the top of her lungs. Sarah kept walking, determined to get Sophie away from the crazy woman who was traumatizing her. Margaret ran ahead with surprising speed for a woman her age and deliberately blocked the path to the parking lot, spreading her arms wide to physically prevent Sarah and Sophie from leaving. You are not leaving until this situation is completely resolved to my satisfaction. Please move out of our way, Sarah said as calmly as possible, though her heart was racing with fear and anger. My daughter is very upset and needs to go home. I don't care if she's upset. She broke clearly established rules. There must be consequences. There must be accountability. Mrs. Crawford, please step aside immediately. No. Absolutely not. You cannot teach children that they can break rules and then just walk away without facing punishment. That's exactly what's wrong with society today. No accountability, no consequences, no respect for authority. Sarah tried to walk around Margaret, but the older woman grabbed Sarah's arm roughly, her fingernails digging into Sarah's skin. Do not touch me, Sarah said in a voice that was deadly quiet and serious. You will listen to me. Margaret's grip tightened painfully. I will not be disrespected and dismissed by some entitled young mother who thinks her precious little child can do whatever she wants without consequences. Let go of my arm immediately. Not until you agree to make that child restore the sandbox to its original condition. Not until you agree to follow the rules like everyone else. Sophie was crying hysterically now, absolutely terrified by the crazy lady who was grabbing her mother and yelling scary things. Mama, I want to go home. Sophie sobbed. I want to go home right now. We are going home, baby, Sarah promised, pulling her arm free from Margaret's painful grip. We are leaving right now. Sarah started walking again, holding Sophie tightly and moving as quickly as possible toward our car. That's when Margaret Crawford made the decision that would destroy her life forever and nearly end my wife's. I warned you. Margaret screamed behind them. I gave you every chance to do the right thing. Sarah heard rapid footsteps running behind her. She turned around just in time to see Margaret charging toward them with something metallic glinting in her hand. Margaret had run to her car, opened the glove compartment, and retrieved a loaded handgun. You will not disrespect me. Margaret yelled, pointing the deadly weapon directly at Sarah and Sophie. You will not walk away from Margaret Crawford. Sarah's medical training as a nurse immediately kicked in. She quickly put Sophie behind her own body, using herself as a human shield, and raised her hands in the universal gesture of surrender. Mrs. Crawford, please put the gun down, Sarah said in her calmest, most professional voice, though every instinct was screaming with terror. There are children here. Someone could get seriously hurt. I don't care about children. You need to learn respect. Your daughter needs to learn that there are consequences for breaking rules. Okay, Sarah said, forcing her voice to remain steady and calm. Whatever you want us to do, we'll do it. Just please put the gun away and don't hurt my daughter. Fix the sandbox. Make that spoiled brat fix what she destroyed. Absolutely. Sophie will fix the sandbox exactly the way you want it. Just please lower the gun. But Margaret was completely beyond reason now. Months of built-up rage and hatred had exploded into complete madness. It's too late for that. You disrespected me. You walked away from me. Nobody walks away from Margaret Crawford. Nobody dismisses me like I don't matter. Mama, I'm so scared. Sophie cried from behind Sarah's legs. I don't like the loud angry lady. I know, baby. Just stay right behind Mama. Everything is going to be okay. Shut up. Margaret screamed directly at Sophie. Stop crying. Stop being such a weak little baby. Do not yell at my daughter, Sarah said, her voice becoming stronger and more fierce despite the gun pointed at her heart. I'll yell at whoever I want. This is my neighborhood. These are my rules. I make the decisions here. Other parents and families at the playground had noticed the terrifying situation unfolding. Someone was frantically calling 911. Children were crying and being rushed away by their frightened parents. But Margaret was too consumed with rage to notice or care about the chaos around her. "You want to protect your precious little spoiled brat?" Margaret snarled with pure hatred in her eyes. "Let's see how much you love her when you're not around to coddle and spoil her anymore." "Mrs. Crawford, please don't." Margaret Crawford pulled the trigger. The gunshot exploded across the playground like thunder, echoing off the buildings and trees. Sarah collapsed to the ground immediately, bright red blood spreading rapidly across her chest and stomach. Sophie's scream pierced the air with pure terror and anguish. "Mama! Mama! Wake up!" Margaret stood over Sarah's bleeding, unconscious body, still holding the smoking gun in her trembling hand. For a moment she seemed surprised by what she had done. "That's what happens when you disrespect the HOA president," she said quietly, as if she were explaining something obvious to a child. "I was sitting in my office at the district attorney's building, reviewing case files and preparing for upcoming trials, when my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Mercy General Hospital. "Mr. Thompson? This is Dr. Martinez from Mercy General Hospital Emergency Department. Your wife Sarah has been shot and is currently in emergency surgery. You need to come to the hospital immediately." The entire world stopped spinning around me. "Shot? What do you mean she's been shot? There must be some mistake." "I'm afraid there's no mistake, sir. A woman shot your wife at the neighborhood playground in front of your daughter. Your little girl is here with Child Protective Services. She's physically unharmed but severely traumatized." I dropped everything I was doing and raced through traffic to get to the hospital. 20 minutes later, I burst through the emergency room doors to find my sobbing 5-year-old daughter being comforted by a kind social worker. "Daddy? Daddy?" Sophie ran to me and threw herself into my arms. The angry lady hurt Mama with a big loud gun. There was blood everywhere. "I know, baby. I know. Daddy's here now. Is Mama going to die like the people on TV?" I couldn't answer that question because honestly, I didn't know. For the next 8 agonizing hours, I sat in the hospital waiting room with Sophie curled up in my lap, both of us crying and praying and hoping. Sophie kept asking when Mama would wake up and come home. I kept promising her that Mama would be okay, even though the doctors hadn't given me any guarantees. The police arrived to take my statement and gather information for their investigation. That's when I learned the complete unbelievable story of what Margaret Crawford had done to my family. The perpetrator is Margaret Crawford, age 64, current president of your neighborhood HOA, Detective Rodriguez explained. Multiple eyewitnesses saw her shoot your wife during an argument about playground rules. "Playground rules?" I repeated, unable to process what I was hearing. "Apparently your daughter built a sandcastle that violated some HOA regulation. Mrs. Crawford became increasingly agitated when your wife attempted to leave the playground with your child." I literally could not believe what the detective was telling me. Margaret Crawford had shot my wife because my 5-year-old daughter had built a sandcastle in a sandbox. Where is Crawford now? In custody at the county jail. She's being held without bail on charges of attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, child endangerment, and terroristic threats. Child endangerment? She pointed a loaded firearm at your 5-year-old daughter and made verbal threats against the child's safety. The rage that flooded through my entire body was unlike anything I had ever experienced in my life. As the district attorney, I had prosecuted hundreds of violent criminals, murderers, and dangerous people. But this was completely personal. This monster had terrorized my family for months and then tried to murder my wife in front of my child. "Detective Rodriguez, there's something very important you need to understand," I said in a quiet, controlled voice. "I am the district attorney for this county. Margaret Crawford just shot the district attorney's wife and threatened to kill his 5-year-old daughter." The detective's eyes widened with shock and understanding. "Sir, I had absolutely no idea about your position. Margaret Crawford is about to face the full power and resources of the justice system. I will personally ensure that she spends every remaining day of her miserable life behind bars." Finally, after what felt like forever, the surgeon emerged from the operating room to speak with me. "Mr. Thompson? Your wife is out of surgery. The bullet punctured her right lung and nicked a major artery, but we were able to repair all the damage successfully. She's going to survive and make a full recovery." I broke down crying right there in the hospital corridor, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. Sophie was asleep in my arms, emotionally and physically exhausted from the most traumatic day of her young life. "Can we see her?" "She's in recovery now. She'll be unconscious for several more hours, but you're welcome to sit with her." Sarah looked so pale and fragile, connected to all the beeping machines and 4 tubes. Sophie woke up as soon as we entered the room and immediately perked up at seeing her mother. "Mama sleeping?" Sophie whispered hopefully. "Yes, baby. Mama is sleeping so her body can heal and get better. The angry lady made Mama sick with the loud gun." "Yes, she did. But Mama is going to be completely fine." Sophie climbed very carefully onto the hospital bed and curled up right next to Sarah's still form. "I stay with Mama and protect her." "Yes, you can stay with Mama as long as you want." As I watched my brave little daughter try to protect her unconscious mother, I made a solemn promise to myself and my family. Margaret Crawford would pay the maximum possible price for what she had done to us. The next morning, Sarah finally woke up. Her very first word was, "Sophie." "I'm right here, Mama," Sophie said, her entire face lighting up with pure joy and relief. "Are you okay, baby?" Sarah's voice was weak and hoarse, but filled with love and concern for our daughter. "Did the angry lady hurt you?" "I'm okay, Mama. The angry lady can't hurt us anymore. Daddy said he's going to make sure she goes to jail forever." Sarah looked at me with questions and worry in her eyes. "Margaret Crawford is in jail," I told her gently. "She's been charged with attempted murder and will never be able to hurt our family again." "Sophie, is she traumatized? Has she been having nightmares?" "She's been incredibly brave. She's been asking about you constantly and refuses to leave your side." "Mama, I was so scared," Sophie whispered, snuggling closer to Sarah. "I thought you were going to die like the princess in that sad movie we watched." "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Mama is going to be just fine and we're all going to be safe." "Will the angry lady ever come back?" "No, baby. The angry lady will never, ever hurt us again. Daddy is going to make absolutely sure of that." Over the following days and weeks, the complete story emerged through police investigation and media coverage. Margaret Crawford had a documented history of systematically harassing and driving away families with young children from our neighborhood. She had made at least 12 families move away over the past 5 years through her campaign of intimidation and abuse. But shooting my wife was the final, unforgivable act that would end her reign of terror forever. As district attorney, I had the authority and resources to ensure that Margaret faced the strongest possible criminal charges. "I want you to charge her with everything legally possible," I instructed my team of prosecutors. "Attempted murder in the first degree, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, child endangerment, terroristic threats, violation of civil rights. Add every single charge that will stick." "Sir, given your personal involvement in this case, perhaps another prosecutor should handle it?" "Absolutely not. I want Margaret Crawford to understand exactly who she chose to mess with. She shot the district attorney's wife in front of his child. She needs to face the full consequences of attacking a prosecutor's family." The media picked up the story immediately, and it spread across the country within days. "HOA President Shoots Mother Over Child Sandcastle" became a headline that shocked people everywhere. Social media exploded with outrage that a grown woman had attempted to murder a young mother over something so completely innocent. Margaret's defense attorney tried desperately to argue that she was mentally ill and not responsible for her actions. They claimed that the stress of being HOA president had caused a complete psychological breakdown. "Your Honor," I said during the preliminary hearing, "mental illness does not excuse attempted murder. Margaret Crawford made a series of conscious, deliberate choices that led to her shooting an innocent woman in front of a 5-year-old child." Margaret sat at the defendant's table wearing an orange jail jumpsuit, looking much smaller and older than when she had terrorized my family. She refused to make eye contact with me throughout the proceedings. "Furthermore," I continued, "this was not a sudden moment of madness. This was the culmination of months of systematic harassment, intimidation, and abuse directed specifically at my family. Margaret Crawford had been planning and escalating her attacks for weeks before she finally resorted to attempted murder. During the trial preparation, we discovered just how extensive Margaret's campaign against families had been. We found hundreds of violation reports, thousands of photographs of children playing, and detailed plans to change neighborhood demographics by driving out families with young children. When the trial began, Sophie had to testify about what she witnessed. It absolutely broke my heart to watch my little girl describe the most terrifying moment of her life. "The angry lady was very, very loud," Sophie said in her tiny voice, speaking into the microphone that had been lowered to her height. "She said very mean things about my sandcastle. Then she made the loud noise that hurt my mama." "Were you frightened?" the prosecutor asked gently. "Very, very scared. I thought the angry lady was going to hurt me too. I thought my mama was going to die and never come home. Margaret's attorney tried to challenge Sophie's testimony because of her age, but the jury could clearly see the truth and innocence in my daughter's words. In my closing argument, I spoke both as a prosecutor seeking justice and as a father protecting his family. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Margaret Crawford didn't just shoot my wife. She shot a dedicated nurse who had spent her career helping others. She shot a loving mother whose only crime was protecting her child's right to play safely. She traumatized a 5-year-old girl who will carry these scars for the rest of her life. I looked directly at Margaret, who was finally forced to face the consequences of her hatred. Margaret Crawford used her position of authority to terrorize innocent families for years. She turned what should have been a safe, welcoming neighborhood into a place of fear and intimidation. When one brave mother finally stood up to her bullying, she responded with attempted murder. I ask you to find Margaret Crawford guilty of all charges and send a clear message that violence against families will not be tolerated in our community. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on every single charge. Margaret Crawford was convicted of attempted murder in the first degree, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, child endangerment, and terroristic threats. At sentencing, I delivered a victim impact statement that I had written with Sarah's help. Your Honor, Margaret Crawford didn't just commit a crime that day. She tried to destroy everything my family holds dear. She shot my wife for protecting our child. She pointed a gun at my 5-year-old daughter. She turned our neighborhood paradise into a place of nightmares. The judge sentenced Margaret Crawford to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Mrs. Crawford, the judge said sternly, you committed one of the most senseless and evil acts this court has ever witnessed. You attempted to murder an innocent mother in front of her child because of a disagreement about a sandcastle. Your actions were not just criminal, they were pure evil. Margaret was led away in handcuffs, finally facing justice for her years of hatred and violence. Today, 1 year later, Sarah has made a complete physical recovery from her injuries. The bullet scars on her chest are barely visible, and her lung function has returned to normal. But the emotional healing has taken much longer. Sophie still occasionally has nightmares about the angry lady with the gun. She was afraid to go to playgrounds for months and would cry if she heard raised voices. We've been in family therapy to help her process the trauma, and she's making wonderful progress. Will there be other angry ladies who try to hurt families? Sophie asked during one of our therapy sessions. No, sweetheart, Sarah assured her. What happened to us was very rare. Most people in the world are kind and would never hurt children or families. But why did she hurt you, Mama? Because she had chosen to fill her heart with hate instead of love. Some people make that sad choice. But there are many, many more good people than bad people in the world. Our neighborhood has been completely transformed since Margaret's arrest. The HOA elected new family-friendly leadership that immediately removed all of Margaret's ridiculous rules. They added new playground equipment specifically designed for younger children and organized regular family events. Families who had been driven away by Margaret's harassment have started moving back. The playground is filled with children's laughter again instead of fear and silence. Just last week, Sophie built another sand castle at that same playground. This time, 3 other children helped her make it even bigger and more elaborate than before. Look, Mama, Sophie called out excitedly. We made the most beautiful castle in the whole world. Sarah smiled and took dozens of pictures of Sophie's magnificent creation. It's absolutely perfect, sweetheart. And no angry lady can hurt it this time, right? No angry lady will ever hurt you or your castles again. I promise. As I watched my wife and daughter playing happily at the playground where we almost lost everything, I felt profound gratitude for justice served. Margaret Crawford was in prison where she belonged, and my family was safe, healed, and free to live without fear. Most importantly, Sophie was learning to trust the world again. She was remembering that playgrounds are safe, that most people are good, and that children have the fundamental right to play and build sandcastles without fear of violence. Margaret Crawford had tried to destroy our family with her hatred and attempted murder. But in the end, love, justice, and the resilience of an innocent child had triumphed over evil. The angry lady was gone forever. The playground belonged to the children again. And our family was finally truly free.